Hi, this slideshow is a course on how to pass the U.S. and Illinois Constitution exam for the High School Equivalency. Test specifics. The test consists of 60 multiple-choice questions. You will need a total of 31 questions correct. The average time to take the test is 90 minutes. There is no time limit to take the test. The test is free to take. You can find out where to take the test by visiting www.iccb.org. I am in no way affiliated with the Illinois Community College Board. I will be going over only the information you need to pass the exam. There will be a lot of material to study if you receive the book from ICCB. However, this is a slimmed down version with no filler. Write down these notes and read them every morning 1 week prior to the exam. If you follow these instructions, you will pass. One of the main authors of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson. Two topics of the Declaration of Independence. 1. Theory of the American government. The government works for the people do not exist for the good of the government. 2. Listings of wrongs done to the Americans by the English government. The U.S. Constitution. Article 6 states that the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Separation of powers. Separating the power of government into three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. Separation of powers explained. To keep any one branch of government from being too strong, the writers of the Constitution divided the federal government's powers into three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. The Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments in the Constitution is called the Bill of Rights. Delegated powers. Article 1, Section 8. These are the 18 powers given to Congress that are listed in the U.S. Constitution. Reserved powers. 10th Amendment. These are the powers not given to Congress. The 10th Amendment says that they belong to either the state or to the people. As an example, the Constitution does not mention education, marriage, divorce, or voter qualifications, except age. Each state's laws may govern them. Implied powers. Implied powers are powers not stated in the Constitution that seem implied by powers that are expressly stated. These powers Congress assumes in order to carry out delegated powers. Federal system of government. This system divides the powers of government between state and federal governments. Compromise. In the event of a disagreement, both sides may give a little so a settlement can be reached. This is called a compromise. Apportionment. Article 1, Section 2. The determination of how many members are allowed in the U.S. House of Representatives. Determination is made every 10 years after the U.S. Census. Each state gets a portion of the total 435 representatives. How many representatives each state gets is determined by the total population that live in that state. Concurrent. The power that both state and federal governments have at the same time. Example, the power to tax. Habeas corpus, Article 1, Section 9. A court order that requires that a prisoner be brought before a judge to be determined if he is being held lawfully. The prisoner must be told the reason for his arrest. Ex post facto. Someone cannot be punished for something they did before a law was passed. Eminent domain, Fifth Amendment. Governmental body taking private property for public use and giving a fair price for the property. Congress. The Constitution requires Congress to meet once a year. Great Compromise. The Philadelphia Convention in 1787 had to settle arguments among the states. The small states wanted to keep the powers they had under the Articles of Confederation. The large states thought that they needed more powers than the small states because they had more people. A compromise was worked out. The large and small states agreed to divide the lawmaking branch into two houses. Great Compromise. The large states were satisfied by the creation of the House of Representatives. The House members are elected according to the state population, giving the large state more representatives. The small states were satisfied with the creation of the Senate. Each state is allowed senators. This means the interests of the small states were protected. How many representatives do states have? The population of the U.S. is counted every 10 years. The census. The division is based on each state's population. The membership of the U.S. House of Representatives is 435. Length of a senator's term. The length of a senator's term is 6 years. How are representative seats apportioned? By the percentage of the U.S. population living in the state. Who is the representative's leader? The elected speaker. What are some of the powers of Congress? To lay and collect taxes, to borrow money, and to coin money. Concurrent powers. The state and federal governments have some of the same powers that can be used at the same time. Example, the power to tax. Bills. When both the House and the Senate approve a bill, it is then sent to the President. What can a president do to a bill? 1. He may sign the bill, then it becomes law. 2. He may veto a bill, then it's returned to the House. Cabinet. Article 2, Section 2. The Cabinet is made up of the President's advisors. They are appointed by the President and meet only at the request of the President. Electoral College. Article 2, Section 1, and the 12th Amendment. They are the people in each state that are chosen by the voters of the state. They elect the President and Vice President. The candidate that wins the majority of votes in that state gets all the electoral votes. What if no candidate for president receives a majority of the electoral votes? The House of Representatives chooses the presidents from among 3 people who receive the most votes from the Electoral College. Qualifications to be president or vice president. Has to be at least 35 years old. Has to be a natural-born citizen. Has to be a resident of the United States for at least 14 years. Some of the president's powers. Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Can grant pardons and reprieves. Can recognize foreign countries and governments. 3 types of federal courts. The Supreme Court, U.S. District Courts, also known as trial courts, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, also known as appellate court. How are all federal judges chosen? The President nominates all federal judges. The Senate must approve the judges the President chooses before they can take office. How long do federal judges serve? They can keep their jobs as long as they live. They can be removed only through impeachment. What evidence is needed in order to prove treason? 2 witnesses must testify in open court, or the accused person must admit guilt. Judicial review. The Supreme Court and all federal courts can determine if Congress, the President, or the other courts have violated the Constitution. Marbury versus Madison. First judicial review established. Checks and balances. Each branch of the government is subject to a number of constitutional checks by either or both of the other branches. How does the judicial branch check the legislative branch? The Supreme Court can declare laws made by Congress unconstitutional. The principle called judicial review was established during the Supreme Court case Marbury versus Madison. How can the Constitution be amended? Step 1. 2/3 of both houses can vote to propose an amendment, or 2/3 of state legislators can ask Congress to call a national constitutional convention. Step 2. Must be approved by 3/4 of the state legislators, or 3/4 of state legislators call conventions, and the conventions approve the amendments. Important amendments. Amendment 1, 5 freedoms. Amendment 10, reserved and residual powers. Amendment 14, citizens' rights. Amendment 16, federal income tax. Amendment 22, limits presidential term. Petition. To ask that something be done. First Amendment. What rights does the First Amendment guarantee? Freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom of speech, right to assemble, right to petition. 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment made former male slaves U.S. citizens. Brown versus Board of Education. In 1954, this famous case argued that black schools were not equal to white schools. The 14th Amendment guarantees equal protection to all. The Supreme Court agreed that segregated schools were not equal and declared them to be unconstitutional. This case overturned the 1896 U.S. Supreme Court ruling Plessy versus Ferguson. How did the 20th and the 22nd Amendments affect the President? The 22nd Amendment states that no person shall be elected to office of President for more than 2 terms or 10 years. A term is 4 years. How should the U.S. flag be displayed when flown with flags of 2 or more nations? When flags of 2 or more nations are flown during peacetime on separate staffs, the flags should be at the same height. How should the U.S. flag be flown with local, city, or state flags on the same staff? When flown with local or state flags, the U.S. flag should be at the peak. Illinois Constitution. The present Illinois Constitution was approved by the voters in 1970. Article 1, Bill of Rights in Illinois. Citizens will not be discriminated against because of their sex, physical, or mental handicaps. Bill of Rights in Illinois. Article 1, Section 2. Due process and equal protection. Article 3, Voting and elections. Eligibility to register to vote. 1. Must be U.S. citizen. 2. Must be 18 years old. 3. Must be a resident of the election precinct for at least 30 days. General Assembly. After each 10-year census, the General Assembly is required to redistrict the legislative and representative districts. The Constitution requires the districts be compact, contiguous, and substantially equal in population. What are the requirements to be a member of the Illinois General Assembly? 1. Must be U.S. citizen. 2. Must be at least 21 years of age. 3. For 2 years prior to the election, a resident of the district which he or she is representing. Passing bills. Every bill passed by the General Assembly must be presented to the governor within 30 calendar days. What special veto power does the governor have? The governor may veto one or more items in an appropriation bill without vetoing the entire bill. This is called the power to item veto. The President of the United States does not have this power. How can the governor's veto be overridden? By 3/5 vote in each house. Governor's duties. Nomination of some executive officers with the approval of the state Senate. Lieutenant Governor's duties. The Lieutenant Governor performs the duties and exercises the powers that may be delegated to the office by the governor and those prescribed by law. If the office of the governor becomes vacant, the Lieutenant Governor becomes governor. Attorney General's duties. The Attorney General is the chief legal officer of the state.